I remember. Welcome everyone to the Monday night live Q&A with Dr. Rob. We're so
And
glad
Tammy.
that everyone is here. Thank you. We were just talking about, Dr. Rob is doing a presentation. If you're watching this live or shortly thereafter for therapists on this work and why it's a specific, mode of treatment. And I've, I do a little cleanup on aisle 5 on the slides because I'm nitpicky, big surprise. And so I was looking through them and really great content, but why don't you share a little bit about what you're teaching and why it's important?
Well, first I want to say, Tammy, your humility is just ridiculous. I mean, I know that, no, really, because what you guys don't understand is we've worked together such a long time that she understands the content, she understands the organization, she understands what I'm trying to say. And that kind of reflection is golden, because I could send it to anybody and
Thank
they'd be,
you.
you didn't spell this right, but that's not what I need. So thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
um, yeah, I mean, you and I both know that while you can teach someone what needs to be done, but teaching them how to do it is a whole different thing. And one of the reasons that I rely on you to refer to therapists that we know and trust is because there are many therapists who are, however well-meaning, will go down a rabbit hole. Because I don't know if you all know this, but addicts tend to lie, manipulate. I cannot just manipulate you as my spouse. I can tell you as a therapist, oh, well, oh my gosh, this happened to me and that happened to me, and all of a sudden we're going down the rabbit hole of your experience as a child. Important, but my primary goal is to stop you from acting out. And I said that over and I called it the prime directive, right, from Star Trek.
Mhm.
It is the number one thing we are there to do is to stop their acting out. And so repeating that over and over and over again to the therapists, um, well-meaning, feeling people have worked with so many clients with trauma and abuse, all those kinds of things. But really in this work, what comes secondary, I'll tell you what, if I was married to you, you'd be sorry that I went through all that trauma, was talking about it in therapy. But what you'd be more concerned about is, was I working on stopping? So I have a request for you, by the way, Tammy. If why don't you leave your Q's in the Q's, because I get confused when they end up in the A's. And if that's okay, let's see how that.
We can because you joined in time. So, yeah, no offense, but yeah, so now we can. So
Well,
we're going to go to the open.
great.
Okay, so the first question is, my husband has been a porn addict for 34 years on and off. 6 years ago, he started massage places for sexual favors, and we are both wondering if there's a separate addiction now. He is in a program, but states he stopped the massage places a while ago, but porn has been his addiction. He feels he has not done anything in 8 months since D-Day, meaning he has not acted out. So he's been abstinent for 8 months,
Well,
according to the partner.
I
So,
think that's a pretty easy question to respond to, Tammy, in many
mhm,
ways, because
please.
um, so what I experience in this partner is a lot of loving denial, which is this is the way I hope it is, and I'm looking for insight and I'm looking for understanding, and I want to have, a real sense of where we are and moving forward. But I think you're being misled because, and maybe it's just the language, maybe I don't understand what you wrote, but when I hear a porn addiction on and off, I think this a porn addiction, let's like saying someone had a drinking problem on and off. No, they've had a drinking problem their whole lives. And so, your husband has been a porn addict. And then when you say 6 years ago he started massage places, how about 20 years ago he started massage places? I don't believe addicts lie. And we say only as much as we think you already know and maybe a little teeny bit more because we don't want you to get in any more trouble. And so with all due respect, and let me say from the beginning, as Tammy says, I don't know you. I don't know your relationship. I don't know anything about you, but I'm reading this as if, and all of these, as someone was coming into my office and they laid this out. So if someone laid this out in front of me, I would say the porn addiction is being minimized, that the massage parlors have probably gone on for a very, very long time. By the way, sexual favors is such a nice way of saying seeing prostitutes, because that's another thing that addicts manipulate is the languaging, so it feels more comfortable. It's not a separate addiction. Sex addiction is sex addiction. The porn may play out in a different way, but if you're lying, I'm not as interested in what you're doing as whether you're lying, manipulating, um, cheating, hiding, gaslighting. And I used to say, I said this, I don't know, I think it's in my slides there. I said it this morning to someone. I said, look, if you're coming to me for treatment and you want to see prostitutes, and you come to say to me, Dr. Rob, is it okay? Because my problem is really with porn. I'm going to say to you, you know what? See all the prostitutes you want, as long as you ask your wife first. If it's okay with her, it's okay with me. So I don't think there's a separate addiction because the real issue is lying, cheating, manipulating, gaslighting. And I see a lot of that here in this. So I'm going to repeat your last thing. He's in a program, not sure what that is or how often he's going, but he states that he has stopped seeing sex workers or prostitutes a while ago. I don't believe that. But his porn has been an addiction, he feels. Well, what does he actually know about this? Because anybody who knows about this understands, Tammy, maybe I'm being too sharp, but I don't think so, because this makes me feel really concerned for this partner.
You keep going.
She's being led
I've
or
got a
down.
gracious assumption on something. So you keep going.
I think
I've
she's
got,
been led down the happy trail, like in The Wizard of Oz when the poppies show up. She thought she was going to Oz and she meant to go to Oz, but those poppies, she didn't see them coming. I can't carry that metaphor anymore. But nonetheless, I tried. But nonetheless, I think you're being lied to. I think you're being manipulated. And you know what really tells me that and moves me away from maybe to yes is hasn't done anything in 8 months. Well, you don't have a history of problematic behavior with porn for 34 years and then start or have already been seeing prostitutes and then just say, okay, well, I just go to a few meetings a week. I go to a little of a program. I don't know what that is. And, but now I've stopped because I understand the problem and I realize this is a lifelong chronic issue. People who are alcoholics may want to drink the rest of their lives. People who are compulsive gamblers want to go to the casino the rest of their lives. Sex addicts want to go act out. What that means is we need maintenance. I have depression. I know that I can only manage so much stress, so much anxiety. I have to sleep in a certain way. Otherwise, I won't get out of bed. I have a chronic problem with depression. But when it's managed in a healthy way and I recognize the signs and I attend to it, I'm in remission from that depression. Well, it isn't any different than addiction. You're an addict the rest of your life, but how you understand how to manage it, the acceptance that it is a lifelong problem, and the steps you need to take all the way along the way, which are not going to end. They may shift, but they're not going to end is the key to the healing. And so the most primary thing that I hear that is concerning to me is the hasn't done anything for 8 months. That to me tells the whole story. So Tammy, I turn to the air conditioner, but can you, I'm
yes. Now
sure.
I'm going to make my gracious assumption. Let's say he actually has quit the massage parlors, 8 months ago. Let's pretend that that is true. And I'm going to say that's pretend. But I'm with Dr. Rob. I don't believe that he stopped all of the other porn there's a whole bunch of things we call non-porn porn. Where it's social media, it's all of these things. So it's tantalizing and all of those exciting, but it's not, I don't call that porn. But I want to use Dr. Rob using an analogy about drinking, and I'm like porn and sex addiction. We actually have two different groups for our online work groups, and I'll put the link in a moment. But the reality is, like, if you drink whiskey or beer, you're still drinking alcohol. It doesn't matter. You're still using a maladaptive coping mechanism. He's been doing this that you know of for 34 years. And so and I say this often, many most addicts, this is a maladaptive coping mechanism that started with dissociating before age 10. So this is like just stopping the problematic behavior is truly the tip of the iceberg. And you said he's doing a little bit of stuff, and we did a webinar in March of this year. It's posted on our previously recorded webinars, about what real recovery is, and real recovery takes 2 to 5 years of not just not acting out, but doing the work, 90 meetings in 90 days for, 12 step in our drop-in groups and things like that, our
Mhm.
online work groups, all of those things that help us shift, having accountability, not with you, you're not the accountability partner, you're the spouse, so that's, it's a whole different thing. Here's what I really want to know is what are you doing to take care of you? How have you established healthy boundaries, including internal boundaries, like what are you doing? I'm glad you're here. I'm thrilled you're here. And, but this is like, what support do you have? Have you been going to our drop-in groups? Dr. Rob, I will tell you, like I found out I was looking, it doesn't matter why, but I was looking, behind the scenes on some things today. And some of our drop-in groups for partners have 80 to 100 participants. Those are
Free
people
groups that we're giving.
free. Yeah, the
Right,
free drop-in groups.
right.
Like, so there's people getting support. Those are all groups that are supported by someone holding the safe space, so that We
You don't
talk
end
from
up
a
yelling at each
codependent
other, right?
lens, right? There's no bashing. We're not going to
Right.
bash another person in the group. We're not going to bash the addict partner, but it's a safe space to gather information, to share, what's going on, to get support, to meet other people that you can connect with, offline as well. And so we have resources from a codependent lens. Dr. Rob wrote a book about that, because we don't go, you're part of the problem, you're an enabler, you're codependent. We go, gosh, you love someone who's broken and we want to support you. So the biggest thing for a partner, is what do I need to do to take care of me? We have a boundaries work group that starts later this month, and also the betrayed partner work group. I will pull the information on those. So the time frame of, you think he stopped, maybe, and again, and gracious assumption that he stopped the massage parlors. I'm pretty confident that unless he's now got a massive eating disorder, or he's switched to gaming or shopping or gambling or whatever, that can
More
happen.
secrets.
Yes, but the reality is, we don't just magically stop this highly problematic behaviors and have good coping mechanisms, like especially after decades of having problematic behavior. So, but my point for you is, get help and support for you to know how to navigate this space, because he will always be an addict. It will be an addict in active addiction or an addict in recovery. There's really no straddling the fence. So the more he does, the better solid foundation he has. But that doesn't mean you can't heal regardless of what he does or doesn't do. So
Yeah, I wanted just to add one thing is that God bless you, spouses. Hope springs eternal. You love us. You want to believe what we're saying. You want to believe that this is it. You want and hope that we can just move on. And we know that. And we play it because we figure, we've gotten away with this much so far. And by the way, we tell you a little bit and you're just so grateful. Oh, finally, he told me. There's a whole bunch more to say. Also, I just want to say 34 years. I have a feeling, and I make this up, the spouse has not known about this problem for 34 years. That perhaps if you stumbled on something more recently, 10 years, 5 years, whatever, and it's a porn problem, how come you didn't know about it 30 years ago? I've heard so many spouses say, if you had just told me, I would have helped you. I would have supported you. But here we are 20 years later, and I'm just finding out this thing that I don't know who I've been with. And so I want to say one more thing. There's a difference. Tammy talks a lot about boundaries. And so, what I would want to know in these groups and in my own learning is, what does a healthy person do who's approaching this? Should they be going to therapy? Should they be going meetings? Should they be taking classes? Then I can hold out the expectation that I will feel safe when you do this. I can't make you do it. You do whatever you want. But if you want me around feeling safe and trusting of you, then you're going to do these things because we understand they work. So I suggest you also learn more. Sex, Love, and Addiction, which is podcasts that I've done. I think we have 2.5 million downloads or something. There are so many people who are learning about this. And I would say educate yourself because this is a great question for a newcomer partner. But I think if you've been around working on this for a while, you'll understand that sadly, there's a lot more there for you to grieve over. And it's a grief issue. Who wants to do that?
one more thing, because you said he states he stopped, and
Right.
like, yeah, I always say, if the lips are moving, probably lying. But here's the deal, I'm not like, we're addicts in recovery. So we come to this from a place of, we want everybody to get the help that they need, but we know it starts with denial. I'm going to lie to myself first, and then I'm going to lie to everybody else. The record that I know of is, someone came to our residential treatment program who had lied to their therapist for 11 years.
No.
Yes, they paid their therapist for 11 years to go to therapy and lie to them. So that's just the insanity of the addiction. So, but guess what? If he's really committed and he's doing the work, his actions will start to change. And that's what you're looking for. This is like, watch the actions, not the words. Okay. I had a generalist therapist represent me at my first disclosure. She knew me well. It was a disaster because she was not prepared and needed therapy after the disclosure. Oh my gosh, she needed therapy. Yes, like, thank you. I know, I'm no. Let me apologize. I'm so sorry you had such a difficult experience, and thank you for affirming. Why, like. I meet in the last little while, I have reached out to over 500 therapists because there's some new ones that I just don't know. And I'm trying to check in with everybody so that the referrals I'm making, A, that they're codependent aligned. B, I want to know if they're working with the addict or the partner. C, do they do disclosures? Like I'm unpacking all of that as well as sharing the resources, with them that we offer that supplement their work. So thank you. I'm so sorry that you had such a difficult time. If you don't have a qualified therapist who's doing a good job with you, TAMI@seekingintegrity.com. I'll do my best to help you find someone.
Yeah, and we don't need to say too much more. You said it, Tammy. But if I have a pain in my side, I'm going to see my doctor, my general practitioner. If the doctor says, "Oh my God, I'm worried about cancer," I'm going to go see a cancer specialist. And general therapists, they mean well, and Lord knows we can help with depression or anxiety or confusion in your life, whatever, or diagnose mental illness. But this is a specialty thing, and I think even some of us who hold out ourselves to do this, there are people who just collect what do you call them? Collect not licenses,
Letters behind their name.
letters behind their name. And I would want to know, has this person done it before? How long they've been doing this work? All of that. And by the way, just to say it, you can interview therapists. You don't have to feel committed to it. And most of us, if we're good at what we're doing, will say, I won't charge you for that first hour or first half hour we spend together. I understand we're getting to know each other. And you should probably interview a few therapists before you feel safe and you feel comfortable. So yeah, there's lots to say. So many questions,
Well,
Tammy.
one more thing on that, because every therapist that I know that has started, like they've been doing addiction work for years, and then they learn more about this, and then they start thinking about the clients that they didn't serve as well as they could have had they had the knowledge. And that's the case with everyone. So I really appreciate when a therapist is going like, I don't know enough and I'm going to refer you
Oh,
out. Rather, I mean, that's what you want, is like, this is not my wheelhouse, and I want you to have the right help. I'm here for you to support in other ways. That's a great therapist that knows their boundaries. So, okay. Betrayed partner here. First, I hate when we hear first D-Day was 2.5 years ago. Many discoveries since. All about one single affair partner. First full disclosure was a few months ago. He admitted to an emotional affair. Second full disclosure was a few weeks ago. He admitted it was a sexual the entire time and it never ended. Third full disclosure added an earlier instance in the affair. And finally, a fourth added 3 more years
oh,
to the start of the affair. We're supposed to have another, but I really don't ever even want it anymore. And
mm-mm.
and yeah, yeah, please, you start.
Well, it's just that in our attempt to get away with things, what happens is we destroy your lives, not only by what we've done, but every spouse. I was talking about this today. I must have done something this morning. So whatever. Every spouse wants to know one thing. What has been going on? Just tell me the truth. There will be at least some peace of mind. Are they going to die? Or are they going to live for a year? What? Just tell me what's going on. And you haven't known what's going on your whole lives. So spouses, the way I think about it is you just want a foundation. You're flying through the air. You just want a place to stop and say, okay, this is the bottom. I can breathe and figure out what I'm going to do next. But if you hear that it's the bottom and then it isn't, then you're in free fall again. And then it's worse because the next time you're told this is everything, you sort of think, well, maybe it's a foundation. Maybe as you start to doubt yourself and your own, and then it goes falling. So we call this trickled disclosure, where we just give you enough, as I said, to keep you quiet. But let me just go back to this story. Uh, we have a treatment center. This is a treatment center case. This is a man, and we have 8 beds. It is not inexpensive, but it's not as expensive as those really fancy places. But I had to tell you, this is not someone who is, this is someone who's deeply troubled. Once people lie, okay, but 4 times and wants to bring you in for, I would say I'm getting off the torture rack and I'm going all the way back to the beginning because disclosure is an endpoint. It's like walking through a new doorway through a whole set of relationship hope. And by the way, a disclosure has one purpose only, and that is to begin to restore trust in the relationship. If you're not going to stay together, there's no reason to do disclosure. If there's going to be, if it isn't all in there, you're never going to restore trust. So here's the problem. No matter how much work, and I'll say this to husband if you're there, no matter how much work you do, she'll never trust you again. It doesn't matter what you have destroyed, even the potential for meaningful trust. And so, Tammy, I think Would you mind advising this partner briefly how, I assume it's a woman, how she can take care of herself? Because I would just be a complete mess here.
And I hope you're not a complete mess. You're showing up here, and I'm going to give you a gracious assumption that and you're even going like, yeah, I don't even want this, and I don't blame you because I'm with Dr. Rob. The point of a formal therapeutic disclosure is to set a foundation for trust and healing, and he has ruined, any opportunity for that. So why get more information? You know it was bad. What I would really care about is what is he actually doing to change? Because
Mm.
I don't hear any of that in this, in the 2.5 years. I don't hear, he's going to 12 step minis. He's working with like if he's working with a CSAT, this would be one that I'd have concern about, that it keeps thinking that having another formal therapeutic disclosure is a great idea. That would not be, like until he was able to show up and really do one, why would you keep doing this? So this is how you can heal regardless of what he's doing or not doing. I did put in the chat, we've got a boundaries work group starting later this month. Debbie McCrae is the queen of healthy boundaries. She's so good at identifying what internal boundaries are and how to hold them. Boundaries are not punishment, they're not control. It's about I need to take care of me regardless of what you're doing. So I would love for you to shift the focus to you and how do I take care of me? And we do have, we've got the work groups, we've got drop-in groups, we have an empowered women's retreat. It's the only thing we do in person. There's one coming up in October
Other
that
than
can be
treatment.
yes.
Hmm.
That's only, yeah, yes. Residential treatment for men, empowered women's retreat for women are the only things that we do in person. Everything else is done, online, but we have a number of resources, so I don't know who you're working with in all of this. Clearly, you must have a CSAT or a CPT, AppSet trained therapist because you keep doing disclosures. But at some point, somebody, I mean, I'm trying not to have a major reaction because I feel like you're getting gaslit by even the professionals that go, yeah, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Rather than going, stop the insanity. Let's get a plan for your support, and healing. So again, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com if I can, point you towards any resources. But like I hurt for you. This is
Yes,
this is awful. So
I know, Tammy. I just want to wrap my arms around this person, and I picture them just crying on my shoulder.
mm,
Because, and let me just go back to some very early things. Are you sleeping in the same bed? Is this person in the house with you? The affair is still going on, by the way. There's no question about that. So, and by the way, the men that I work with in sex addiction who say, I can't decide, is it my partner or the
I
affair
hate
partner,
that.
my wife? And of course, what I know is, by the way, I have the next one lined up. And even though I think she might be the one, not my spouse, I'm still starting the next affair. So it isn't about you and it isn't about the affair partner. It's about our brokenness. But yeah, I wouldn't want this person in my house. I'm so sorry. And my fear would be, well, if I push him out of the house, then he's going to go off with his affair partner. Well, he already has. So might as well just do it and own it and live it. Anyway, I honestly I just want to give you a hug and by the way, Tammy mentioned work groups. These are classes. They're things that we do. You can join for 6 weeks. You're with other spouses, boundaries, betrayed partners. The addicts have their own, sex addiction 101, porn addiction, but this is specific for partners to understand the questions you're asking. And yeah, you go to therapy. But I was saying this also today. Oh, I know it was the podcast I did. Therapists don't necessarily have a whiteboard up on the wall that says, let's take 20 minutes out and help explain this. We're with you. So the opportunity to learn is really why we put that online. And I think we've had hundreds of people go through those courses.
Oh,
So
thousands. I'm not exaggerating. So here's one more idea that popped into my head. Dr. Rob does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation for couples. When there's this kind of stuff going on, he is really good at parsing through and giving guidance and insight for people. Very validating for partners and often hope filled for people because they're going like, oh yeah, I'm not so broken that there isn't an opportunity for change and healing, but you would have more information. So, it's one time, 2 hours, it's online, it is not therapy or treatment, it is just a consultation, but he's done them with couples all around the world. He is very good at that. And rather than continuing to flounder for months or years, and steeping in that pain, getting help to, and a lifeline out, could be really useful for you. So
and I want to say one more thing from a pro-dependent lens. You must love him a lot. He must be deeply, deeply important to you that you're able to tolerate this pain and keep asking questions and keep trying. you want this to work. You want this. And I'll say this also, I think partners, when we are really in trouble, you guys, you partners are the ones who on some level hold out the best of us. You can see who we might be, who we could be, but of course you can't live on that. And you've had too many demonstrations that your hopes and dreams are not going to be realized the way this is going. So, but bless you for loving this person and believing them and wanting to work it out. That's codependence, not what's wrong with you for staying with them, but you must really care. And yeah, I feel good about that. And that part you can hold on to.
Betrayed partner, it's looking like I'm going to have to move on separately from my addict, fully relapsed after he moved back out and is now engaging in serious avoidance. I think the only way for him to choose recovery is to hit rock bottom. Do you often see partners get back together once the PA virtual essay into true recovery? I'm scared of him sexually acting out in the event that happens, but I know I need to take care of myself and move on. And what type of therapist does he need? Addiction or something else? So let's start with the first one. We could, and we've talked a little bit about you need a qualified professional and you partner need a qualified professional, but can we talk about, I'm scared of him sexually acting out in the event that happens. It likely will. He's, he's relapsed and he's, it's not like, even if you, I say this to partners, you can't bubble wrap him enough to make him be completely safe. And guess what? If you did, guess what happens? The addict gets resentful and will still figure out a way to act out. The, we are extremely manipulative and creative. I was like, if we put half the energy towards recovery that we do towards our acting out, we do really well in recovery because we're really good at making those things that we really want happen. It's fear, shame, whatever. And those are just reasons, those are not excuses. But I hear you. But what happens if you chose you and taking care of you? And like he's got to hit, unfortunately, I was in one of my 12-step meetings the other day and somebody was kind of bemoaning the fact that they had gone back out and were coming back in and they wish they hadn't. And I was like, it is what it is. You chose that in that moment and nobody was going to stop you. I've had other people. I had somebody that reached out and they had called a while back. I won't go into any details, but said, I wish I had chosen to come to, they're coming to residential now. I wish I had back then. And I said, you weren't willing because otherwise you would have called me back and you would have signed up, but you weren't willing. And now things have gotten worse, loss of, lots more losses. And now they're ready. And I said, so at this point, use that now you are willing. Now you are ready. If he's not ready yet, he's got, you can't, Dr. Rob says this all the time. I should let him say it, but he says the one thing I can't create with, a client is willingness. So we are only ready and willing when we're ready and willing. So thoughts?
Well, there were two things I wrote down. And by the way, I'm looking down. I'm not checking my phone. I'm actually taking
Yeah.
notes for you guys. Um, I cannot say this strongly enough to every partner in the room. Please, if you hear nothing else, you can never be, under any circumstances, no matter what happens, responsible for our behavior. You are not responsible. If you make me miserable, if you gain 400 pounds, if you nag me all the time, if you act like a crazy, whatever you do, blame me, shame me, I can leave. I can go see a doctor. I can volunteer. I can find other ways to deal with my anger and unhappiness. But to go sexually act out or drink, that's my choice. How I choose to handle it. So, and I'm speaking to I'm afraid he's going to do something if I'm not around or whatever. He's going to do what he wants to do no matter what. He'll blame you. He'll say, I wouldn't have kept that because we like to make it someone else's fault. But the truth is, please, partners, there is nothing you can do to lead us to do this. You can make us very unhappy. We can be really unhappy in our relationships, whatever. But the choice to do that about our unhappiness, that is ours alone. The other thing I wanted to say is and Tam, if you don't mind putting this in the chat, I did a really wonderful podcast on separation and trial separation, and I think it's gone up, right?
Therapeutic. Well, so
Therapeutic
he did a really
separation,
wonderful podcast and I did a really wonderful webinar and both of them, and they're both listed in yeah, the people, it was Dr. Stevie Hall and Lindsay Stanley, and they are great. And there's actually a plan for therapeutic separation.
right?
And so, yes, you can listen on a podcast or you can watch on a webinar. They're fantastic. So
Yeah, I was, and thank you, Tammy, because it's a resource we haven't had for a long time in terms of telling people how to do this. And it's everything from how do you do a therapeutic separation in your own home versus because maybe you can't, you need them there for whatever. Um, but it's a much less threatening idea than all or nothing. Sometimes the pain of being with this person is just too hard. Maybe they're lying and cheating, and maybe they can't handle living that way and being with you. So I want to say it's not a threat. It's not, I'm going to do this or that if you don't do this or that. Is that I can't live this way anymore, and I need some time for myself. And the good thing about a meaningful separation is that there are rules. I hear people say we're getting separated, but they call each other every night, or they're still doing this and that all the time. There need to be rules and structure and how
A
we're going to handle
plan.
things. A plan. Thank you. But
Yes.
I find, I think the question to me, what I'm hearing is, if we come apart and this problem is continuing, or if we're not finding the answers, we'll be able to find each other back in the relationship. Of course you can. I mean, I've seen miracles happen, and I've seen a lot of people choose recovery despite or in spite of how much pain they've put themselves through. And I've seen people choose the addiction. I'll tell you what, a lot of the men that I work with in addiction who are on a second marriage, and no harm or foul to those of you who are involved in a second marriage, many of them will say, I probably could have kept that first marriage from falling apart had I understood how much I was hurting my partner. And so if you're in the second marriage, don't line up for more pain. So yeah, I think it is very possible. I would not leave this person with the hope or the fear that they're going to go out, or the fear they're going to act out. They're going to do that no matter what. And I would take the time for me to grow and figure out what I need best for me. So yeah, I'm very much in favor of, especially if someone isn't doing the work and you're having to sitting there painful day after painful day. You don't want to sit through that. So
So
go ahead.
therapeutic separation, both of those. There is also a moving on alone drop-in group for partners. It's for partners who have been left, or have one foot out the door. So the focus is different than like we're trying to repair a relationship. So that, they're free. You can join that. There was also, there's something you talked about, and even with the previous question, we did a webinar on demystifying gaslighting. Brilliant information. So that's in the previously recorded webinars too. But this is another couple that I can't help but say I'm going to nudge you towards, considering an expert consultation with Dr. Rob. Like, is he avoidant, and but able to move towards? That would be fantastic. Lots of addicts are avoidant. We know what we know. Our maladaptive coping mechanism is our comfort, and we're used to that. And even despite negative consequences, but as long as you guys are kind of hanging on, well, we'll kind of push the envelope on that. So I hear you being fed up and not willing to consider that. Your next part of your question is, what type of therapist does he need? A therapist, even the best CSAT trained therapist, and there are some that I recommend, and there are some that, like we talked about, just get the letters behind their name and aren't really doing the work. That's 50 minutes once a week. So this is, like I said earlier, this is before age 10, decades old, stuff. And so that isn't enough, but 12 step, I mean, it's a whole thing. Or our expert residential treatment program that really helps address the problematic behaviors and the underlying issues. That's an opportunity to move forward in a different way. And Dr. Rob said, there's a fee for it. It's cheaper
Oh
than a
yeah,
divorce. I know that for sure.
it's cheaper than a lawyer, but
Yeah, I know but at some point, what does it cost to not get the help? You're already living separately. What is it going to cost to not get the level of help that's needed? But here's the flip side. He can reach out to me. I'll give him all kinds of information, or he can call the intake number. But for you, what kind of therapist do you need? What kind of support do you need? Our drop-in groups, the online work groups, we have a number of those kind of resources. But a qualified professional who gets betrayal trauma, APSAT, CPT trained, those are great resources for you to be able to hold the space for you, regardless of what he's doing or not doing. Okay,
I'm
so
looking forward to this question. I've had
the
a look
next
at
one
it.
is, my husband has a compulsive porn user for 50 plus years until he watched a video about how it damages the brain and was able to quit immediately. He cheated several times, signed up on dating sites, Ashley Madison, and Affair emotional affair. His cheating is not compulsive, it's calculated. I always catch things before they go to physical cheating. His CSAT said he is not an addict. He said he loves me and wants to save the marriage. If he's not an addict, is he simply an asshole? What is the treatment?
So to the last question, the answer is yes to both. He's an addict and he's an asshole. A couple of things about this. I wrote some notes. I listen to language very carefully. It's one of my best skill sets. And when someone says, where is it? Cheating is emotional.
His
It
cheating
was
is
the
not
word
compulsive, it's
quit.
calculated.
Oh, well, ended up. There's something about ended up. But in any case, compulsive. Okay, I can be very compulsive with porn, but you're going away this weekend. You have to understand a process addiction. It isn't just the sex, it's everything leading up to it. It's all around it. You're leaving on Friday, and on Wednesday, I'm thinking, who am I going to be with? And I'm online looking and I'm chatting, I'm doing porn. So we call it a process addiction because it's the whole process of doing it like gambling. I'm going to the casino, I'm getting the money in the bank, my heart is racing, all of that. The gambling is the end point, but so we are addicted to the whole neurobiological process that comes when we get excited and aroused, not sexually, but about going to do this thing. So when I was acting out, well, I didn't have affairs. When I was acting out with people, it was calculated. That didn't mean I wasn't an addict. It just meant that the thinking about it, when we work with addicts, we say, it doesn't start with being at the sex club, or it doesn't start with being looking at the porn. It starts with the thinking. That is, I want to do this, I'm going to go do this. And that's where it all starts. So it is calculated, but that doesn't mean someone is compulsive, because they're compulsive in their thinking and in their planning and their organizing. Now I have a little bit of theme for this tonight, which is it's this, it's not that. It's porn, but it's not an affair. It's all the same. It doesn't matter. It's an X around lying, cheating, compulsive, addictive. I don't really care what the words are called. What I do care about is that, oh, by the way, there was nothing else. Sorry. Um, who did he quit for? I don't believe that he really quit, but if he really did quit, he quit because it was going to hurt his brain. Okay, this is when I get sarcastic. Really? This is Rob in California. Really? How about he quit because it was hurting you? How come he quit because he was worried about his relationship? How come he didn't quit because he felt so badly about what he was doing? It only came to the idea, and it's actually not proven on any level that it harms our brain. It was only when about him that he decided, I'll quit. And I don't, or at least decided to tell you he was going to quit. Um, but folks, these are not the actions of someone who is loving and caring. I hear a lot of, oh, sorry, I'm racing around here, Tammy, because I've been racing all day. The CSAT part. Well, listen, I am a very, very well trained. I think I'm reasonably good at this. But if you come in and you lie to me, and I assume you're lying because I'm good at this now. But if you tell me this part or that part, I might say, oh, well, it's just an affair, or because I'm only going on what you've told me. I don't know what and now I'm going to come back to you and say, I told them everything and they say I don't have this problem. Well, of course they're going to tell you that. But the truth is, you're not in that session. You don't know what's being said. And I can pretty much say from what I see here and your description, that there is call it whatever you want. There's a serious problem with compulsive or problematic sexual behavior that is destroying his life and your relationship. I don't need to do anymore. I don't need to know anymore. And I don't know whether CSAT was helpful or not, because we lied. Absolutely lie. In fact, Tammy, the slides that I was creating today, I said, here are my expectations of a client who comes into treatment. They're lying, they're manipulating me, they're lying to me, they're gaslighting me, they're not telling me the truth. That's my expectation when they come to see me for treatment, because that's what they do. So yeah, I think there's a lot of more thinking and consideration. In fact, Tammy, if you have a thought about what they might do, what might this person actually do? Because they're
Oh,
lost.
well, I do, and I hear the desperation of I want to believe him, and even I always catch him. Do you always? How do you know you always catch him? Like I would go
Right,
get STD tested because I would be like I don't know that I always
right,
catch them.
right.
We are really good. At finding, little loopholes and things. So, and at the end of the day, so yes, physical cheating, it does involve, contact, but if you perceive his intention was to do that, So, but I listen to murder podcasts, and it's like you attempted manslaughter is not deemed the same as manslaughter. And I'm like, but you just missed, and so you get lesser charges. At some point, you're giving him an out because you caught him before he actually acted out. He was still going to go do that, so at some point, how is that helpful for you? I would love, yeah, like, and I can't even imagine how much energy you are probably devoting to worrying about, and checking on him and all of this kind of stuff. Is he an asshole? I think, I
Well,
think
certainly his
we,
behavior would
I
indicate
was going
that.
to
How
say,
about that?
yeah, like, we talk about, like the other alternative, if you're not an addict, and then you are actually choosing this, then you're incredibly emotionally immature and you don't care about anyone else. You're very, so actually addict gives you an opportunity to do something different. As far as the CSAT, and I do hear, it's like he's saying his CSAT says that's always the, but also I'm going, what, the CSATs have, a battery of assessments, has he done, those assessments? Because those are actually helpful at, parsing out things that will be, useful, or like the therapist can say, well, you've said this while we're talking, but you answered it differently on this. What, tell me more, so it really can help them do that. I care about you and with all of this. And so again, in the chat are the betrayed partner work group and the healthy boundaries work group. Both of those would be fantastic for you. And and if he's struggling with all, and I hear he has a CSAT, but I don't hear my betrayed partner specialist is really helping me, emotionally regulate so that I can bring my thinking part of my brain to this equation. So I would invite you, focus your energy on you. You can't change him. You can sure take care of you, in this. That's the only thing we've got, is we can take care of ourselves, our actions and our reactions. But I hear a whole bunch of lying and gaslighting with, within all of this. So
I want to add one more thing, which is and I hear this all the time. How could you love me and do this if you love me? Well, I can love you and have deep feelings for you, but I am so broken that in that moment, what's more important to me in that moment is drinking. What's more important to me is sexing. It's not that I don't love you, it's just I pushed you out of my brain. And this is all I'm focused on. And in that moment, I don't love anybody. I'm paying attention. This is what I talked about the calculated. As I'm starting to think about it and making the plans and all that, you're going out of town, the more into it. And by the way, what you don't know won't hurt you. That is probably the biggest lie of all, because the number one thing I hear from partners is not fully about sex. It's the lack of intimacy, the lack of relationship, the lack of connection. And when you're in active addiction, you're not going to be able to connect with your partner. I know Tammy's looking and saying, we have 15 questions and we have 15 minutes. What are we going to do?
and you know what? We're gonna, like I said at the beginning, we run out of time. So we
And we
do.
have a
So
lot of resources. We're
yeah,
not
we
the only
do.
ones.
Yeah. Okay, so then the next one is, I'm 39 years old and married. I went to rehab center for 30 days for my compulsive behaviors. By the end of the program, something clicked. I gained an understanding of myself and a level of acceptance. It's been 90 days clean, no porn, no masturbation, no inappropriate behavior. But I recently had a trigger on social media. It happened without me searching for anything. I was just buying a desk on Marketplace and saw an egg. I don't use social media, and this was the first time I used it again, but it was the actual purpose of the purchase. It made me realize how vulnerable I am to suggestive content. I've stayed strong, but I'm really feeling the pull. I think I'm inherently deviant, so I don't understand how I'm going to be different. And my wife needs me to show that I've developed empathy. I'm just scared, and maybe that's something I'm not capable of. I go to a weekly SA group and a CSAT weekly. That's not enough. I don't know what um, like, it's a 24/7 issue. You're sharing this. These things are going to pop up. Like, you're just out of a, like 90 days. Great. You get a 3-month chip, woohoo. And guess what? Real recovery takes 2 to 5 years. Like, you are up against these compulsive behaviors and this thinking that is, so one meeting a week for an hour and seeing your CSAT for 15 minutes against a 24/7 thing. Empathy is learned. We talk about this on lots of webinars, so check out some of our webinars. Empathy is a higher level skill. Like, after 90 days, you might do a few things like that. You're even thinking about your wife is amazing, great. And but to learn to have real empathy, that's what going to 12-step meetings is about. That's what doing your work with groups, all of that. So I don't know what your aftercare plan was and how support, but like the guys that come to our residential treatment program, have an aftercare plan, have the support. We have a virtual step down. We have all of these tools because, we don't want you to come and then go, well, good luck. We want you to, we have, so I would lean whatever, pull out your aftercare plan because, like I can't imagine that your aftercare plan is like, well, just go to one 12-step meeting a week, live there for a while you learn to, manage these things. All of life is full of triggers, and yeah, do I think you're deviant? No, I think our brains are hijacked. And I wanted to say that about the previous one. No partner ever understands us because they would never do this stuff. We addicts get it. We get it. But more, like more help, stay in the lane. 90 meetings in 90 days would be fantastic. And, lots of people do it for longer. More support would be really good. Our online work group, join any one of those, whether it's Sex Addiction 101 or here's another one, Out of the Doghouse for Men Who've Been Caught Cheating. Really good, and it helps with trust and empathy. And I think it's starting soon. So our drop-in groups, more. I'm glad you're here. I'll shut up because I know we're running out of time.
Well, I'm actually in a very different place than Tammy. This is when I love our working together. What you're asking is what I want someone to ask. This is what I want to hear from someone, an addict, and I want you spouses to listen to this, which is, I feel good about it. I've been really working on it. I noticed I was triggered. I'm worried about it. I'm not sure how that happened. It made me realize how vulnerable I am. That is not the reassurance that oh no, I didn't look. It was just a pop-up and I'll never look at it again. And, and it's only been this many years. And one thing this person learned in treatment is to be honest, and you may not like it that I feel uncomfortable. I did something to make you uncomfortable, but you told me and you're telling us. And so, I'm not saying that you don't need to do more work. Of course, you need to do more work, but I really respect the fact that you understand how vulnerable you are. And you know what? And I keep going back to alcohol, but you haven't done this very long. This is pretty new to you. I would not suggest to someone who's in early alcohol recovery that they go visit a friend in a bar. That's just not the right place for them. And so they would realize how vulnerable they are. You are vulnerable. Absolutely. Good thing that you know that. But I just want to touch on the deviance part because I know what deviant means, and it's not as bad a word as we think it is. But it sounds like someone who's deep feels like they are their brokenness is what's the word, that they are unlovable, that they're a horrible person, that they have no worth or value. This sounds a lot like shame. Deviant means different in a negative way. I can be very deviant. I am when I'm active in my addiction, I am showing up in a negative way as different than most people who wouldn't do that. So yes, you could call it that, but I don't understand how I'm going to be different. You're going to be different by practicing change every single day. And I do, I mean, that is the practice of it. And by the way, I want to say, and I will be very proud of this. My best-selling book is called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. Wish I changed that subtitle. Out of the Doghouse, a
You
relationship
won't.
saving guide. I can't. I don't own the book. Um, Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. And I wrote it for men who are not simply sex addicts, but because they're also cheating, and or just cheating, just cheating. And I don't think that, first of all, the empathy is something that I actively avoid as an addict. Empathy is an understanding of how my behavior would leave you feeling. I don't want to know how my behavior would leave you feeling when I'm acting out, because that might make me stop or feel bad. So now you're asking someone to do a 180 and be aware of how the behavior has hurt you and what it's done. That's as Tammy said, a long-term thing. I think what is important is you have worked on this, you're paying attention, you've had a long period of time of stopping, you're aware of your vulnerability, you're being honest. So the one thing I would discourage is the shame and the self-hatred, because that's not productive. What I hear is, yes, you're broken. You'll be broken the rest of your life. But I hear a lot of, you went to treatment, you've been working on this. To me, this is a very hopeful story. I just wonder, as Tammy said, I think you should be doing more work. I would be going back to that meeting and say, oh my God, you know what? It triggered me. And then someone's going to say, I understand that. Let's go for coffee and, hang out with the winners. So yeah, we can't at the beginning do enough work. I just
Yes.
don't think that's that's the case. So anyway, Tammy, with all due respect, I feel good about this person.
No, I
Um,
do too. He's here asking the question rather
right,
than going, "Oh yeah, it popped up and I
right.
acted out." No, no, I do, and I'm telling you, I wouldn't have made it. And this is just me, but I wouldn't have made it on one meeting a week. I like, oh my
Right.
gosh, that would have been so hard. So I'm just telling you, you don't have to. There's way more, because this is, the more you front load this
Right.
stuff, the better. Because then you go, oh, there's a tool to use. Oh, someone said that. I've got a phone number, like all of those things. So that's all. I saw, no, I'm
And
with
no,
you.
I want to add one more thing, which is
Mhm.
if I struggle with something, I might say I'm an awful person, I'm a terrible person. What I could say is, you know what, I think I need a little more support.
Yes,
Now I
thank you. That's a great
realize
idea.
that, because when a client comes in, they say acted out, they expect me to say, I can't believe that. And I just say, wow, you must need more help. Maybe you should go to another meeting or do something more. So all you're hearing is that party that says, I need more attention, and pay attention. You noticed it,
Yes,
do something about it. So
yes.
let's keep moving.
Okay. The next one is, my son is an alcoholic who can go for months without drinking and then binge drink until he blacks out. Because he can go months without drinking, he does not consider himself an addict or alcoholic. What type of treatment therapist is best for him to recognize the problem to help him with treatment?
Hammy, you can,
This is tough. It is not. So here's the deal. It's never about how much they drink, or I'll say when we drink. It's not how much we drink. It's about the consequences, and that's true
right.
with looking at porn or anything else. So when he's in a blackout, there's probably negative consequences. But the cycle of addiction, just because his cycle of addiction is longer, like he can go months without drinking instead of like hours without drinking, that does not mean that he isn't on the cycle of addiction. I have some resources. I would invite you to TAMI at Seeking Integrity. I can point you towards those. Our focus is so much with sex addiction or co-occurring with alcohol, but there are resources for you, and I would welcome the opportunity to help you. Uh, point you towards those resources as well. So
To me, this is heartbreaking, because it
yes.
isn't your spouse, it's your child. And to watch him, and by the way, this is kind of like drip drip disclosure. I mean, you're hopeful, and then it all falls apart. I don't look, I agree with Tammy, it isn't how much, it isn't how often. I might have 2 glasses of wine and I'm drunk as poop, and she might have a whole bottle and she's not. What matters is, what is the effect on my life? Am I putting myself in danger? Am I hurting other people? Am I letting myself down? Have I, been arrested for whatever that is? And by the way, the blackout, maybe nothing, people do all kinds of really dangerous, awful things when they're in a blackout and they don't remember. So if only because, it doesn't matter what you call this, call it alcoholism, call it whatever you want to call it. This person has a serious problem that they need to address. Tammy will offer some treatment options, but the bottom line is, if I don't say it's a problem and not willing to look at it, my fear is, what's going to happen for him to look at? Is he going to have to drive into a tree? Is he going to end up in prison for drinking and driving, or whatever that is? Is he going to hit someone with his car? I mean, how bad does it? You don't want things to get worse. And
Right. Or put
you're going,
himself in a high risk situation where he gets, yes,
whatever.
bad things. It always, bad things happen. There's always consequences. It's just, it's a little bit like Russian roulette. I'm playing. Well, today, like, look, I did this and I had such a great time. I don't remember anything about it, but it was a great time. I mean, I could go on and on about this one, but that's a very specific, different than the sex addiction work that we do. If he's got co-occurring, then we do have a program for him. So
I
um
would read Codependence, by the way. It's very
yes,
important to me. This is a book I wrote for spouses and family members, because especially as a mom, our
or
culture
dad.
says, it's my parents' fault. And boy, I bet he could play that card. Again, it doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. It's his choice to go drinking, and it's his choice to struggle with this thing in the way that he is. I do encourage you to go Al-Anon. I do encourage you to read Codependence. I do encourage you to come to peace, because when I lecture about codependence, I unbearably have a mom, I always have a mom who comes up and says, my God, I thought I was the source of my son's problems my whole life. And now I realize, excuse me, now I realize all I did was love him the best way I could. So yeah. You can't fix it for him, but you can certainly offer him help where he needs it. And you can't convince him he's an alcoholic. In fact, what a great way for him. The more you say it, the more he's going to say no, because he doesn't want to see it, and he certainly doesn't hear from mom. So Tammy, I know
Or dad.
you or dad. Thank you.
So the next one, Dr. Rob, can you discern the difference between a porn addict with narcissistic tendency versus the DSM-5 criteria, not pop culture, narcissist with porn
Sure.
addiction? How is this determined in professional and therapeutic settings? It helps to understand how to approach treatment with limited resources, hoping for inpatient treatment for porn addiction to not be a waste.
Well, I think that question all ties together. So I've been doing this work for 30 years, and I have seen thousands of men, for sure. I've created treatment centers, I've run treatment centers, I've seen people individually, all of that. And I can tell you that the actual personality disorders like narcissism, they're so much overblown. In all of these years, I've probably seen truly maybe 8 people who have real meaningful narcissistic personality disorder. People who have narcissistic personality disorder really aren't functional. They are destroying everything and everyone around them because they cannot see they are so broken. So every addict is narcissistic by nature, because if I get and narcissism, I'll do what I want to do whenever I want to do it. It's my decision. I'm going to pretend that it's not hurting you. Narcissism is addiction in that sense. But in fact, that's what the 12-step programs are about. Is becoming more other focused, not being so selfish. So I expect when someone comes into treatment that they're going to show up with narcissism, narcissistic traits, narcissistic behaviors. That's my job. My job is to say, I'm not married to you, so you can't, I don't really care what you do, but are you kidding me? That is my job, to confront the narcissism. It will always be there. As a narcissistic person, I will always at first think I'm the right one. I will always ignore what you have to say. I will always say the wrong thing, but I've learned how to live with it and be a good person and recognize it and own it. So the DSM criteria, I mean, I honestly think that there is a guideline, but people read too much into it and they make assumptions. It's like as a therapist, when I went to therapy school, every disorder that came up on the screen, we're like, oh, I have that. Oh, I have that. Um, um, the last thing I just want to say is limited resources. Um, or treatment is not a waste if you're going to the right place and you're seeing the right people. And I really, really mean that, because everybody says, in case you haven't noticed on the internet, everyone's an expert. Everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone has experience of this. And I'm going to who has written the books, who has done the trainings, who has run that. And it doesn't have to be me, but it can be successful and very successful, provided this person is motivated. They really want to get help for themselves, and that they go to people who are really, really know what they're doing. And I have seen, and it's tragic to me, people who've put their house, taken the equity line of their house or whatever to send someone to treatment, but what they thought they were going to get and what they got actually didn't mirror. So I don't know, Tammy, real quick about treatment. Is there anything? God knows we know that world.
Well, yeah, and I have already put in the chat is information on our expert residential treatment program. And if resources are really limited, the Porn Addiction 101, work group, it's $395 for a 6-week course. We have free drop-in groups, we have free 12, and we have so many resources, and I point towards those things all the time. So you can always start there, and if that is enough, fantastic. If it isn't enough, then Dr. Rob often says level up. So yeah.
By the way it's determined in therapeutic settings is by being in a relationship with you and seeing how you act and seeing how you treat people and if I challenge you as a narcissist and you just completely push me away and you can't possibly hear any of it, I worry more about you. But if you're in a setting where people are calling you out or challenging you or being supportive, I can see it. I can give you tests, all kinds of tests, but trust me, I can sit with you long enough to understand that you don't see me, that I don't exist, that you're only using me. I can understand that feeling without being in relationship to you. So you're not there to hurt me or let me down. So absolutely, good clinicians can see these issues. We can work with these issues. We can make you, and trust me, if someone's deeply ill, one of the things I hate about therapy is that, if you go to a doctor and then you broke your arm, they're going to say, well, this is what you did, and this is the problem. This is in therapy. We don't tell you what's wrong with you. And trust me, if somebody is a narcissist, I'm going to say, By the way, Tammy, when when therapist said to me, no, that I was a narcissistic, oh my God, that couldn't possibly be true. Imagine me saying I wasn't. But then he backed up by saying,
You've learned a lot.
narcissists make really good therapists, he said. So that completely alleviated, because as a narcissist, I'm unafraid to tell you things that other people might feel uncomfortable telling you. So there are lemons out of that lemonade. Yes.
Well, and we've talked about those, things on on different, groups and things too. And and it isn't as black and white, as
Right.
people like. I'm not a narcissist. I have 100% empathy. I don't know a human being that does. Or I am a full blown narcissist. And there's a lot of in between. And and partners get really frustrated. Well, he can be nice and show up for other people, but not me. That's a whole nother level of and layer. So stop the problematic behavior and then address the underlying issues, and including the and personality traits and things that need, some support. But, yeah, and we
I
are
want to
there. Go
well,
ahead.
I want to
I
say
was gonna say
one
there's
quick
so many
thing,
good,
one quick
good
thing to
questions yet.
Alania, because I read the next question, and the answer to me is do some work on yourself. Go to groups, go to some learn more. I said this again this morning. Someone who is vulnerable to love and feelings becoming more important than reality. I've had people say, "Oh, he's so loving and he's so sweet, and I so enjoy being with him. We have so much fun together. He's so great. Of course, he's still married. He's a heroin addict, but I really value him." You need to be around other people who get caught in these traps so that you can learn more about that they've learned to get out of it. How can you learn to get out of it? You can't have enough education, support. You may pick the wrong person, but maybe they're I want to pick the wrong person. I'll tell you, I'll pick the wrong person, but if they're in therapy and they're working on themselves and they're in recovery, I would rather pick the wrong person who's working on themselves. But I'll tell you, if you know that you have that history, know yourself well enough to know when you're getting back into it, and have other people to reflect. Don't say, "Oh, they're great, I want to date them." Have people close to you who say, "I know what the issues are. Tell me about him. Oh, he's this, he's that. I don't think this is a good person for you." And then you have to listen. Also, take your time. Falling in love and be connected to someone doesn't happen in 3 months. 3 months. It takes a while. Um, I'll just say this last thing. A therapist, I was desperate to have a relationship, when I wasn't able to. And the therapist said to me, I was like, "How long does it take to really know somebody?" He said, "About 2 years." And I was just furious. What do you mean it takes 2 years to know someone? Before they unfold all they truly are, it takes a long time. So be kind to yourself, but take time. Don't rely on your feelings. Rely on the facts that are in front of you. Tammy, we need to spend
No,
a day doing this.
I know we could, and we should. So the boundaries work group would be fantastic for you, because, and like, even if you're like, this is just, it's trust and connection. Why would we not want to understand that? And then we have a special edition webinar that's about closure, the power of closure, that's coming up
Free,
next week,
free.
Wednesday, free. Join us. Bring your questions, because I think when I talked to him, I was like, "Oh, I need to have you to come to a webinar, because everybody wants closure. Sometimes you can get it, sometimes you can't. How do you navigate this?" And so I think it'll be super helpful. Please join. Okay.
But again, I want to say one thing. I feel really good about this person because they're asking the right questions. They
Yes, I
don't want to be
agree.
back in the same situation. They're not going to just walk into it. They know themselves. And now once you're motivated, everything else will come. Hey,
Well, and you're
Tammy.
paying attention. You're not going like, "I've
Yeah,
got my
they're paying
blinders on, I
attention.
can't,"
You may not know what to watch out for, but you know to watch out, and that's the first step. Tammy, thank you for being patient with me today. I know I
No, this
said
is
I'd be done
great.
with my work in an hour, and I spent all
No,
day
no, no.
doing
It's
it,
all
but
good. It's all good. It's all good.
okay,
We're making progress. I've been looking at
we
the slides.
are.
They're fantastic.
They're good.
I'm
Thank
super
you. I
happy. Yeah.
appreciate that. All
Okay.
right. See you
Bye,
guys. Thanks,
everyone.
Tammy.